Do you remember Let's Make a Deal? The iconic game show that launched in 1963 is, I was recently surprised to learn, still going strong all these years later. The era that I best remember is when Monty Hall was the host. Maybe you too. As you may recall, the final segment of each episode, known as The Big Deal, involves an often wildly costumed contestant choosing between three doors in the hopes of unlocking the one that reveals a new car, tons of cash, or some exotic dream vacation. The contestant's gamble sometimes pays off handsomely, and at other times it results in the dreaded disappointment of a less than exciting consolation prize. Life can sometimes feel like a game show, with games of chance awaiting us at every turn. Do you choose door one, door two, or door three? Do you take the job or move to the Yukon? Do you accept the marriage proposal or run off to join the circus instead? Do you have a child or do you have a third child? Do you go back to school or change careers or decide that it's time to downsize? Do you take the experimental treatment that may well kill you? Or do you take your chances without it, come what may? In this life, not every decision is the same, of course. Some are small and inconsequential, while others are absolutely overwhelming. Some decisions are easily made, the path perfectly obvious, the outcome crystal clear. We leap before we need even look. We sign on the dotted line without a second thought. For other decisions, the stakes are so high or the way forward so unclear that we may be frozen in place by ambivalence, by uncertainty, by fear. There are times in each and every life when we simply do not know what to do. We come to a crossroads and really have no idea of which way to turn. What we do in such moments can vary widely across the broader population and even across our own lifetime, as we, with the years, grow more or less tolerant of risk, or we rely on wisdom gained along our life's way, or we decide once and for all that we are absolutely not going down that path again, the one that we have already traveled far too many times. Among our typical options there at the crossroads might be to just barrel ahead boldly in one direction or another, or to turn around and go back the way we came. Many years ago, Bob and I were in France. We had enjoyed a road trip through Normandy over several days, and we were driving back into Paris late at night to return the rental car and then head to our hotel. I should add that we were running low on gas, and I should say that I was driving. And though the GPS and Bob kept insisting that the best path back to the Louvre, where we would drop the car, was in such and such a direction, apparently opposite the direction we were traveling, I was just sure I knew better. After all, I had, across the years, spent a lot of time in Paris, though admittedly none of it behind the wheel and certainly not while driving at night. But I was sure I had a sense of where I was going, until it became clear just how very vague that sense was. The only thing to do was to turn around. And so we did, and everything worked out, though to this day, Bob shoots me a look if I suggest a detour that deviates from the wisdom of the all-knowing GPS that we have named the Oracle. We would have been better served that night at each of the many crossroads we passed through in Paris, one after another as I kept driving, if I had instead exercised another option. That option would have been to stop and wait, to take a pause, a time out. When faced with a crossroads, it is something available to us more often than we seem to realize. A moment to catch our breaths, to gather our wits about us. to give ourselves the gift of time and space that we might find a clue or seek out some sign. Now, the danger in waiting, of course, is that what we sometimes call waiting is actually avoidance, which is almost never actually helpful in the end. And putting off a hard decision, we, for better and often for worse, make a decision by default, a decision that may not always be for the best. Because what then follows happens to us rather than flows from us. But if and when we are truly intentional about waiting and come to understand it as a tool, we will usually be rewarded with clarity, with insight that points us in the direction we feel is ours to follow. It's not always an easy thing to do, especially when we feel we're under pressure. Some 25 centuries ago, Lao Tzu, the author of the sacred writings of Taoism, asked in the Tao Te Ching, "Do you have the patience to wait till your mud settles and the water is clear? Can you remain unmoving till the right action arises by itself?" Do you have the patience to wait till your mud settles and the water is clear? Can you remain unmoving till the right action arises by itself? This is what I call discernment, which is apparently a word I like to use a lot according to some of my nearest and dearest. Discernment is not so much to make a decision as to undertake a decision-making process, one that calls us to listen not only to the machinations of our own mind, but for that still small voice that we may know by many names, be it life or the universe or the goddess or our own conscience. But user beware, that voice may not always come in a form we expect or usher in the answer that we're seeking. In his book, Learning to Fall, the writer Philip Simmons tells of a long hike up a mountaintop where he planned to sit meditating at the base of an ancient tree. He had planned the trip for months. He hiked for hours just to reach the site. At last, sitting atop the mountain, he waited for enlightenment to arrive. He had come seeking transcendence and transformation, and he was determined to get plenty of both. He was looking for change on his own terms. As he settled into his meditation, he says, "My back against the ancient tree's trunk, my legs crossed, my spine erect, the sun warm on my face, a gentle breeze lifting the hair on my forearms. I closed my eyes, ready for my vision. I waited. I waited some more. I quieted my thoughts, stilled my breath. It began as an itch, a small one low down on my back, something that with discipline I could ignore. So I bore down, counted my breath, focused on my crown chakra. The itch had become a tickle and moved higher on my back, disturbing my focus. I held on, projecting a cone of white light from my crown to the heavens, seeking contact. Then the tickle rose between my shoulder blades, becoming a torment until I could bear it no longer. I writhed and scratched, trying to hang on to my perfect moment. What was this thing? Was this the stirring of the Kundalini energy rising up through my chakras, heralding my enlightenment? No. It was an ant. An ant had crawled up inside my shirt on business known only to itself. It was stubborn and elusive, and after more violent contortions, my meditation spoiled. I removed my shirt, shook out the ant, and spent the rest of the afternoon rambling over the rocks before hiking down to the road. I had come for a miracle, and what I got was an ant. Simmons' perfect moment of clarity never came. Instead, what he got was a bug bite and the insight that maybe the answer he was seeking was actually the ant itself. He says, more than in those ancient trees, more than in the mountains, more than in the vast space stretching out before me. The true nature of the sacred was revealed to me in the humble climbing of an ant, after an intriguing smell perhaps, or the pleasing salty taste of skin. It was the ant that returned me that day to the world, that called me to another way of worship, the way of all things ordinary and small, the way of all that is imperfect, the way of stubbornness and error, the way of all that is transitory and comes to grief. The ant was my messenger, calling me back to a world that in truth I had never left. Simmons, there on the mountaintop, sitting at his own crossroads, found an answer very different from the one he had been expecting. Discernment can be like that. It may confirm that we are on the right or the wrong path, or it may upend our understanding of the path altogether. I think what we are seeking in those moments, though, is a clarity that ultimately aligns with what we at the deepest level already know to be true, even if and when it defies our expectations. Which is to say that real discernment requires humility, that it follows a path paved with questions and doubts, but also a path of openness to possibilities not yet considered and to visions not yet fully dreamt. The late Forrest Church, who for many years served as the minister of All Souls Unitarian in Manhattan, believed that the world was made up of three types of people. He said that there are the absolutists, who are always and everywhere 100% sure that they are right, regardless of the topic, the question, or concern. Then there are what Forrest called the 40%ers. These are folks who have few firm beliefs and who are so afraid to take a stand, they do nothing. Forrest described them as the kind of people who are so fearful of spilling their water that they will let it evaporate from the cup. And then there are the 60%ers. These people have a 60% belief in the truth as they find it. They are not stuck like the 40%ers, and they don't grandstand like the 100%ers. These are the people who act knowing that they may be wrong. These are the people who accept that they do not know it all. They are willing to doubt and to act with humility. As Forrest put it, intrinsically we recognize that we are all capable of good and bad. Yet we have to discriminate eventually and make hard choices, knowing as we do that we might be wrong, but we take the risk nonetheless. 60%ers are those who can say with conviction, I don't know, and then go on to make the best decision they possibly can under the circumstances and with whatever information they may have. I think there is something to what Forrest describes here, and yet I don't believe that people fall into neat and consistent categories of being 40%ers or 60%ers or 100%ers. More likely, every one of us falls into each of these categories from time to time. Some decisions, some questions bring out our confidence or overconfidence, while others fill us with doubt and dread, which I believe makes a strong case for discernment, for aiming to be a 60%er, taking in the available evidence or information, listening for the still small voice, and then deciding on a way forward. The truth is, even for the 100%ers, outcomes are rarely guaranteed. So much of life is about choosing a direction and then moving with faith toward the beckoning horizon. I would point out that this is a theological claim, a theological stance, grounded in the notion that we are at all times collaborating in the creation of the world with each moment that we are granted. Earlier, I shared the much beloved but very often misunderstood poem of Robert Frost, The Road Less Traveled. Often, the poem is taken as an ode to the intrepid individual who had the courage to take the road that was grassy and wanted wear. But with a careful reading, it becomes clear that Frost went back and forth, saying that the paths were really about the same, and that they equally lay in leaves no step had trodden black. In the end, he simply had to choose a path. As being one traveler, he knew that he could not travel both. His poem is for me a poetic depiction of what it means to be in discernment. In this life, to make a decision is to move in a direction, to set a course, even as it is sure to involve twists and turns and unexpected detours. To commit to a direction means leaving behind other possible paths, knowing as Frost did how way leads on to way, and that it is doubtful we can ever truly return to the earlier fork in the road and to all of the options it presented. Such is the way we make decisions and how they branch out across the years of our lives. What in the end makes all the difference is the deciding, the discernment that leads to a chosen direction, followed by the commitment to that path to see just where it might lead. So blessings this day on your journey, wherever it may take you. Blessed be.